Boker Tov, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome back into the sanctuary. There were a couple questions. Do I need to wear masks still? And we'll say masks are now optional as we return to a little bit more normalcy than we're used to. This is the first time in quite some time that we've been able to say it's great to see all of your faces and actually be able to see all of your faces for those who are joining us in person. It's also great to be in this space. And so we say the words, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov. How wonderful is your tent, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. If you're following along in the prayer book, page 160, if you're joining us virtually and you don't have a prayer book, we'll post a link in the chat for you to our live prayer book that turns the pages for you.
And it's wonderful to have Peter and Jane back.
I thank you.
Shabbat.
It certainly is. Welcome back, Peter and Jane, and we'll preemptively wish you a happy anniversary as well. Page 162, a prayer for our bodies. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar et ha'adam b'chokhmah, u'v'ravo nekavim nekavim, chalulim chalulim. Galui v'yadua lifnei chisek vodecha, she'im yepatech echad mehem, o yisatem echad mehem, אי-אפשר להתקיים ולעמוד לפניך, ברוך אתה אדוני, רופא כל בשר ומפליא לעשות. Blessed are you, God, who heals our bodies with wonder. 163, Elohai Neshama.
Shenatata bi
שמרה בקרבי אלוהי אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא.
164, our Nisim B'chol Yom. Let's join together antiphonally. The cantor will start and then join me in the response.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני בצלם אלוהים.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shelo asani nochri.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שלא עשני עבד.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzorki.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם פוקח עברים.
Amen. Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumi.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מתיר אסורים.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המכין מצעדי גבר.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם עוטה ישראל בתפארה.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam you give strength to the weary.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המעביר שינה מעיני ותנומה מעפעפיי. Blessed are you, our living God, sovereign of the universe. You take away sleep from my eyes and slumber from my eyelids.
Where to next, cantor?
Page 179, Esa Einai, I lift up my eyes. Esa Einai, Elehaim, Me'ayin, Me'ayin, Yavo Ezri. Esa Einai, Elehaim, Me'ayin, Me'ayin, Yavo Ezri. Ezri, Me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. Ezri, Me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. Esa Einai, Elehaim, Me'ayin, Me'ayin, Yavo Ezri. Esa Einai, Elehaim, Me'ayin, Me'ayin, Yavo Ezri.
203.
שוכנה דמרום וקדוש שמו וכתוב רננו צדיקים באדוני לישרים בתהילה בפי שרים תתרומם ובדברי צדיקים תתברך ובלשון חסידים תתקדש ובקרב קדושים תתהלל יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה
אמן.
ביומא דברה חילותי וימליך מלכותי וחיי חון ומכון וחיי תכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ימרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמי יתברך יתברך כפי שבת באב תרומה ויתנשא ויתרדה ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה מנקו בחטא ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה תהיה אמירון ביומה ואמרו אמן.
invite you to rise if you are able for our call to worship 207. You can be seated. Shabbat Shalom once again, everybody. Great to see all of your faces. Now, rabbis hear some of the same texts over and over again, quoted over and over again, that we generally get tired of them. If you want to know the most over-quoted texts that rabbis use consistently and we just can't even learn anymore. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. We love justice. Justice is great, but we use it for everything. Justice, justice shall you pursue. Even some thinkers we get tired of. By the way, Ve'ahavta l'orecha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. It's a staple text, but there's only so many times where we can hear it as one of the central cores of what we believe before we want to move on to a new teaching and have some novelty. And it goes the same with some of the great thinkers. Even Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who I am incredibly fond of, the idea of Shabbat being a palace in time is oft overquoted. It's a beautiful concept when you think about it. So often the rest of the week we are so concerned about space and the place where we are. Shabbat isn't a palace in space, but a palace in time. But here's my novelty that I want to add to that this week, and it's to build on Heschel's idea. And that is, maybe a palace is the wrong metaphor. Yes, Shabbat is beautiful. Yes, Shabbat is gorgeous. But maybe Shabbat is less like a palace and more like a tent. And I bring that up in an apt way because this week's Parsha discusses the finishing of the completion of what is called the Ohel Moed in Hebrew, which often gets translated as the tent of meeting. But I want to call something different, because Moed doesn't mean meeting necessarily. It could mean meeting. But if you wish someone Moedim l'simcha, what are you wishing them? Moed, same word. May you have a joyous, sacred time. Moed is sacred time. I want to suggest that the tent of meeting, the Ohel Moed, is actually the tent of sacred time, and that is wherever you go, because it's portable, sacredness and God's presence comes with you. That's going to be the metaphor that I want us to dwell upon this Shabbat. Vasuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham. God commands Moses, make me a dwelling place so that I could dwell among you. And the idea of a tent is portable, because just like time, holiness exists wherever you are. Let's do as we do each and every week and create some holy space around us by wishing Shabbat Shalom and building community by giving you each a Shabbat shout out. So let me wish a Shabbat Shalom to those joining us in person first, and I could finally see your faces after a long time, which is great. Shabbat Shalom to Peter and Jane. Of course, Shabbat Shalom to our cantor. Cantor, how about you do the room, and then I'll do the online community. Or do you want to do it the other way around?
Either way.
All right, so I'll start with the room. Shabbat Shalom, Tony.
way.
Shabbat Shalom, Juan. Welcome back. Cantor was just saying that Bonnie started to sit in that back seat, and Cantor said, where is Juan going to sit now? And the answer is easy, in the seat right in front. So welcome back, Juan. I kid you not. She said that last week. Shabbat Shalom, Bonnie. Shabbat Shalom, Michael. Shabbat Shalom, Susan. Shabbat Shalom, Joel and Stephen. And Shabbat Shalom, Joel as well. Cantor, do you have the list of the online community?
I think I do, yeah. We got Tony? I didn't. See, the reason the rabbi does this part is he's so much faster than I am. Well, so we have the Corwins, Alan Stevens, Shabbat Shalom, and Alan Sheila Bialik, Shabbat Shalom, Alan Fine, Arlene Brodsky, Professor Ben, Shabbat Shalom, Dorothy, Shabbat Shalom to my twin, DS, to Gary Rain, or Ryan, to Glenn Corwin and his family, to Harry Catch, Holly, Arlene and Jan and Jerry Gans and Juliet, to your mother, Karen Franklin, to Kathy, to Linda Latter, to Michael Grotel, to Bernie, to Neil, Nicole Bigar, Renee and Robert, Reuve and Roger, Shabbat Shalom, to Shane and Shirley and to Seema, we wish you all Shabbat Shalom.
And as we begin to lean a little bit more into Shabbat, I'll invite you to close your eyes for a second so we can do some Shabbat meditation before continuing in our liturgy. So if you're comfortable doing so, join me in closing your eyes and take a big, deep Shabbos breath. Breathe in, hold, and release. Breathe in the calm and the quiet. And let go of all the things that are holding you from being truly present. Breathe in shalom, peace, and wholeness around you. And release. Take a few more deep breaths on your own. Just focusing on your breath in and out. The last line of Psalm 150, Kol haneshama tehalel hallelujah. Let every breath that we take be one that praises God's name. back to the room around you. Open your eyes. Love the fact that there are windows around us so we can look outside and find part of the beauty of creation. I invite you to join me in doing so. But as we come to Yotzer on page 207, perhaps let's look to our online community and see if there's someone who might want to lead us in Yotzer. Any takers? Page 207, Yotzer. I see Holly. We'll ask Holly to unmute, and we'll add her to the spotlight. Shekoach, page 209.
Baruch ata Adonai,
Baruch u'Baruch Shemo.
Yotzer HaMeorot.
210. Ahava rabba ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu, chemla gdola v'teracham malta aleinu. Avinu malkeinu ba'avor avotenu shebarchu b'cha, v'telamdem chukei chaim lasot ritzoncha b'lavev shalem. Kain tichonenu.
האר עינינו בתורתך ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך ויחד לבבנו לאהבה וליראה את שמך למען לא נבוש ולא ניכלם כי אל פועל ישועות אתה ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון וקרבתנו מלכנו לשמך הגדול באהבה להודות לך ולייחדך לאהבה את שמך ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה אדוני אחד. את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
2:16.
ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל, ואמרת עליהם, ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם נדרותם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף בטיל תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית, וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני, ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Emet, it is true. The middle of 2:18.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. לילה ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני,
Baruch Baruch Shemo.
גאל ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואלוהי אמותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי יצחק, אלוהי רבקה, ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא, עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, קונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר מושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בוגד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיים מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמנות לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, כך כתוב על יד נביאיך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. לעומתם ברוך יאמירו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומך מלכנו, תופיע ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך, ודברי קודשך כתוב לאמור, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור.
continue independently, either using the words on the page through 234 or turning inwardly to the prayers of our hearts. When you finished your personal prayer, you can be seated.
Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol ha'olam ve'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol ha'olam Amen. Shalom b'mama.
May the one who makes peace on high bring peace down to all of us. Bring peace to Israel. Bring peace to all the world. Say together. As we come to Seder Kriyat Torah, just a reminder that in the prayers of Shabbat class, we are learning more about the Torah service. For the most abbreviated way I could possibly explain what we're learning about right now and the ultimate theme of the Torah service, it's the choreographic rituals that recreate the full experience of Sinai. That is, Moshe ascends the mountain, the people at the foot are actually standing of the mountain in Exodus, and therefore the community stands. Torah gets brought down out into the community. There's bowing, all choreographed to represent exactly the experience of what the Torah describes in Sinai. Even when we call up our Olim, our Aliyot to the Torah, it's as if you are ascending the mount with us. Now, learn more every Thursday at 5 o'clock. That's my little plug, but until then, we'll invite you to rise if you are able for Seder Kriyat Torah, beginning on page 236.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, v'yein b'asecha, malchutcha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai oz le'avo iten, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Av harachamim heitiva v'rtzoncha et Zion tivanech omot Yerushalayim tivanech omot Yerushalayim ki vecha levad batachnu melech el ram benisa Adon olamim vayhi binso Aaron vayomer Moshe ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Adonai b'Yerushalayim ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Adonai b'Yerushalayim ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Adonai b'Yerushalayim ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Adonai b'Yerushalayim. Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael. Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Adonai b'Yerushalayim ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Adonai b'Yerushalayim. Shemo Gadolul Adonai iti Uniromima Shemo Yachdav Lecha Adonai Hagedula Ve'hagevura Ve'hatiferet Ve'hanetzach Ve'hahod Ki hol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz Ki hol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz Lecha Adonai hamamlacha Ve'hamid na'aseh lechol lerosh.
Keep going, Cantor.
על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד. על התורה והעבודה והגמילות חסדים. על התורה והעבודה והגמילות חסדים. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להקדשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להקדשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. More?
No, that's good. You can be seated, everybody. We are at the end of the book of Shemot, the end of the book of Exodus, the very last chapter, Parshat Pikudei, which generally gets combined with Vayakel. So it's Vayakel Pikudei, but because we are in a year where we have a second Adar, a leap month, if you will, which was just started yesterday. Today's the second of Adar. The second of Adar.
Second of Adar 2.
That's right, second of Adar 2. We read Pikudei on its own. Pikudei begins, you might actually say, with the accounting of all of the money that was used to build the tabernacle, all the silver and the gold and all the materials and such. And it ends with the line about wherever the Mishkan would go, or wherever God's presence descended on the Mishkan, the people would stay, and whenever it went up, the people would go. That's going to end the book of Exodus, the Maftir, which is going to be read by Alan Fine this morning. But before that, we're going to call our primary Baal Kriyah. Bernie, if we can unmute Bernie. And let's ask, is there someone who would like an Aliyah to the Torah who is joining us in person this morning? Any simchas going on for those joining us in person?
Peter and Jane.
Oh, you know what? We're going to give the first Aliyah to Peter and Jane, who are celebrating their 40th. 30th. Sorry, I gave you a little too much credit. 30th wedding anniversary this morning.
My fault, though, all fairness.
Yeah, you did tell me 40.
I did say 40, and then
And
I
40
looked
is
at
a
them and I
great
said,
Jewish
"Not
number because that's how
possible."
long the Israelites are in the desert and Moses goes on the mountain.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam. Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amin. v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen.
Yep. Well, sorry, Uri. Argaman. Shkoch.
Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, b'chayei olam nata b'tochenu, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Simin tov and
Mazel tov, mazel tov, simin tov, simin tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simin tov, simin tov, mazel tov, simin tov, Yeheilanu, 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 Ulecho Yisrael, Yeheilanu, Yeheilanu, Ulecho Yisrael.
Do you know how difficult that is for him to get back there and get into the key that I'm singing in?
That was the right key.
Yeah. Amen.
Did you just pick a difficult key to make it even more difficult for Peter?
No, he knows me, so he knows like the 4 keys that I probably start something in.
For our second Aliyah to the Torah, Tony, I saw you wanted an Aliyah. We'll invite you up for the second Aliyah. Any simcha or anything special?
It's one of 2 simchas. Because my son celebrates everything on the Hebrew calendar, today is his birthday because it's 2 Adar 2.
So it's your son's Hebrew birthday.
February 13th.
It only happens every 3 years.
Well, but he's always 2 Adar, but not 2 Adar.
Oh, 2 Adar 2. Got it. Understood.
I celebrate his birthday twice.
Sounds good to me.
February 13th, as he has said, Mom, I know you were there.
So let me just explain for those joining virtually. Tony's son's birthday, Scott's birthday, is 2nd of Adar, but when you have a second of Adar, you celebrate 2 birthdays. So it is a simcha again.
Baruch et Adonai hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bacha banu mikol ha'amin, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Sheva. V'sheva.
Ushva. וחמישה. Laden.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to move the camera.
That's good.
That's good, right there. Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Shakach, Bernie.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'hayei olam notan v'tokenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Cantor, why don't you call up the third Aliyah for a mourner?
Our third Aliyah is given to mourners in the congregation. If you are on Zoom and will be rising to say Kaddish and would like to have the third Aliyah, please let me see your hand or put up a virtual hand in the room.
And for the third Aliyah, the
Nobody
reading of the
for
Torah.
Kaddish? Is there anybody in the congregation here who will be rising? Michael?
And
And
Alan, we'll invite you
our-
up as our Baal Kriya for the Maftir of the Torah. And at the very end, as we're finishing and completing the book of Exodus, we say the words, Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek. Strength, strength, may we be strengthened by one another.
My dog died this morning.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bochar banu mikol ha'amim v'notan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen.
Alan, what did I...
My dog went to the big dog
So
person in
sorry.
heaven today. Okay. Amen. Vayichas he'anan et ochel moed ukevod Adonai malei et hamishkan v'lo yachol Moshe lavo et ohel moed ki shachan alav anan ukevod Adonai malei et hamishkan uv'cheyalot he'anan me'al hamishkan yisu b'nei Yisrael b'chol masehem ve'im lo ye'aleh he'anan ולא ייסעו עד יום העלותו. כי ענן אדוני על המשכן יומם, ואש תחיה לילה בו, לעיני כל בית ישראל בכל מעשיהם.
חזק חזק.
חזק חזק ונתחזק.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Shikoach. Beautiful chanting, Ellen, and we're sorry for your loss. With the Torah still before us, if there are names that you would like to call out for healing, please do so as we recite the Mishaberach. And those of you who are in our virtual congregation, we would invite you to type those names into the chat at this time.
The names in our chat as well. Ephraim Tzvi Ben Manya, Chava Esther Rashka Bat Rachel, Dr. Andrew Siegel, Hannah Bat Saura, Jake Fine, Larry and Tricia Tamino, Pradeep Bansal, Nancy Lieberman, Ken Ryan, Joan Burke, Liba Razel Bat Leah Vitzvi, Dennis Cohn, Steve Fitzko, Alan Bendelis, Lana Antar, Roger Kitskis, Debbie Sepp, Holly Manat, and of course, we extend our prayers of healing to all those who are in need of it in the Ukraine right now as well. While the Torah is still in our midst, let me offer a prayer for peace. May the God who loves peace and teaches us to pursue it instill within us and all of humanity the inclination to love and be compassionate, to support the vulnerable among us, to uplift the oppressed and the fallen, and to restore harmony where it has been shattered. Shelter those in danger underneath the shade of your warm embrace. Sustain those who flee for their lives with sanctuary and open arms to greet them. Quell the fears of those who tremble with angst and terror. Grant wisdom and good counsel to those who lead us, and bless them with both the courage to stand up to tyranny and brutality and the patient hearts needed to work together toward peace. When peace comes, may it not be just a lack of war and violence. May it be like the prophetic vision promised by Isaiah. Let nation not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Show us the paths of peace, O God, so that we can walk humbly together with each other and with you.
Amen.
We'll turn to page 240, then 256, as we lift the Torah and dress it and return it to the ark.
V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai biyad Moshe. Yisrael, Yisrael ve'yo'aita chadu. Yisrael, Yisrael ve'yo'aita chadu. Torah, Torah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Torah, hallelujah. כי לקח טוב נתתי לכם תורתי אל תעזובו עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה ותומכיה מאושר דרכיה דרכנום וכל נתיבותיה שלום השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה חדש חדש ימינו חדש ימינו כקדם.
You can be seated. You know what I forgot to announce? My apology. I forgot to announce the page number for the Torah reading. So in case you were struggling to follow us in the congregation, our apologies for not announcing the page number. We blame that on the cantor. She's supposed to announce it. I'm
You
just
know,
kidding.
when
No,
in
that's
doubt,
on me.
blame
That's
it
on
on the
me.
cantor.
I'm joking in case that didn't come across. But if you're
I
joining
knew.
us online, you can always find the Torah readings when you go to jcoh.org/live. Click the Torah readings button, and if we update it, it will give
If
you
we
the
update
most.
it.
I generally remember to update it. It'll give you the most recent Torah readings. Our Haftarah reading for this morning can be found, though, on page 637. Likewise, you can find the Torah readings if you go to jcoh.org/alive and click Torah readings or Haftarah readings. And we are reading from 1 Kings chapter 7, beginning with verse 51. Just as the Mishkan is completed in this week's Parsha, the temple that Solomon builds is completed in our Haftarah this week.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנביאים טובים ורצה בדבריהם הנאמרים באמת ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו, ובישראל עמו, ובנביאי האמת והצדק. ותשלם כל המלאכה אשר עשה המלך שלמה בית אדוני, ויבא שלמה את קודשי דוד אביו, את הכסף ואת הזהב ואת הכלים נתן באוצרות בית ישראל. אז יקהל שלמה את זקני ישראל, את כל ראשי המטות, נשיאי האבות לבני ישראל, המלך שלמה ירושלים, להעלות את ארון ברית אדוני מעיר דוד הציון. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל העולמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, האל הנאמן, האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ותפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Amen. So Jewish is the land of Israel that even its geography teaches us lessons about Jewish values. There are 2 lakes in Israel, even though they're not generally called lakes, they're called seas. There'd be 3 seas, or maybe even 4 seas if you were to call them seas, but 2 lakes in Israel, major lakes. The first is the Sea of Galilee, and the second is the Dead Sea. And both of those lakes are fed by the same body of water. That is, they're both fed by the Jordan River. There's a difference between the 2 of them, though, quite an obvious difference. The Sea of Galilee is teeming with aquatic life, in fact, including one of my favorite fish to eat. Not such a Jewish fish, it's called St. Peter's fish. It's just tilapia, it's not a big deal, but I like to eat it when I'm in the Galilee nonetheless. It's teeming with all sorts of other fish as well. But the Dead Sea, as you probably know, if you've ever been there, is desolate and dead. No life can possibly exist within the Dead Sea, and if you do decide to go to Israel and take a dip in the Dead Sea, you'll realize quickly why. Not even human beings can withstand being in the waters for longer than, I'd say, 10 minutes, 15 minutes before getting dehydrated or burning. Literally, your skin burns. But the main difference between the 2 seas, or the 2 lakes, is that the Sea of Galilee receives and gives water, and the Dead Sea receives but does not give. Sea of Galilee receives and gives, and the Dead Sea only receives but does not give at all. A beautiful musar, an ethical teaching, emerges from this geographic parable. That is, the flourishing of life depends on our willingness to both give and receive. When we take but don't give, we become desolate and salty like the Dead Sea. The Jewish people have scant had problems giving in our history. So ingrained is the value of generosity within our ethos that the great philosophical and legal mind Maimonides said, We have never in our history heard about a single Jewish community that did not have a tzedakah fund, that did not have a fund for charitable giving. Jewish generosity extends, though, long before Maimonides and long afterwards, too. As the Israelites left Egypt and were constructing the Mishkan, as we see in this week's Parsha, the holy dwelling place again where God dwells, each and every one of the Israelites would bring a voluntary gift for its construction. And they were so generous, notes the Torah, that artists designing the sacred space had to tell Moses the following: Marbim ha'am lahavi mid'ei ha'avodah le'malacha. The people are bringing too much. They're bringing so much more than we have room to work with, that God needs to command you to stop bringing. So Moshe commanded all throughout the camp, saying, we're not to bring any more voluntary gifts in order to build the Mishkan. We have enough material already. This is what we who work for nonprofits would call a good problem to have. The people want to give so much that there's actually too much, and they have to tell people to stop giving. That is the spirit of generosity of the Jewish people, inherent within the Torah, but also throughout our history. Generally, though, when we look at the big picture, we realize that the depths of need extend far beyond the potential that we have to give. Moses reminds the Israelites later in Deuteronomy, Ki lo yechdal evyon mikerev haaretz, there will never, ever cease to be needy in the land. And therefore I am commanding you, says Moshe, patoch tiftach et yadcha la'achicha, you are to surely open your hand to your brother, open your hand to the afflicted, because there will always be needy who are in the land. That's our reality. The reality is rarely that we have given so much that there's no more need. The reality is that no matter how much we give, there will always still be need. There's a condition in Musar. Musar is the Jewish ethical teachings of self-betterment that we have. And this ailment, you might call it, is timtum halev. Timtum halev means a stopped-up heart. Whereas the heart naturally wants to give, sometimes we suffer from a blockage of our heart's ability to pour out to others. I'll give you an example of this. You're walking on the street and you see someone who's homeless, and you say to yourself, if I give him money, he's probably going to use it to buy drugs. You know what? He's been out here all day. He's probably making more money than I am. I'm not going to give to them. And you walk right by without giving them anything. That's timtum halev, the walls that we put up in our heart that prevent us from giving. And we see it everywhere in the world. There's lots of excuses that we can make to not give. But there is another kind of ailment which seems we are currently suffering from, and I don't think Judaism has a name for it, but I'll describe it. It's the generosity that we saw in this week's Parsha, when the people give so much and are moved so much with generosity that it would hurt for them not to give. Can you imagine that you open your heart up to give, and then someone says, actually, we don't need it. You can't help. It's actually a pain that should be pulling out your heart if that happens. Again, there's no word for this, but I think it's an ailment which we often suffer from. In fact, we might be suffering from right now. Remember, Moses tells the people, give so much so that you're, so however much your heart will be moved to do so, nedivat halev, so that your hearts are inflamed with magnanimity. That's the kind of generosity that hurts when we don't give. And I think that's the Jewish heart that we are describing here. And I think the Jewish heart is ailing with this kind of affliction right now, because as we look across the world to the Ukraine and see its pain, suffering, destruction, and the need for support, our hearts want to open up and give bountifully. But it's not always as easy as reaching into your pocket and pulling out some cash. We've all been inundated with non-for-profits emailing us, looking for our support, and we wonder if our gifts are really doing enough to heal the pain, to mend the brokenness in Ukraine. We often feel helpless that our help isn't doing enough. To this end, we at the Jewish Center of the Hamptons have been searching for outlets of community support for Ukraine and her citizens, and Ukrainian Jews in particular who are at risk of being in the crosshairs of the violence. We've recommended and emailed several Jewish organizations that you can give to, Jewish organizations that are supporting those Jewish communities in Ukraine, but we're starting a new initiative that I thought would be worthy of talking about this morning. And that is, we're partnering with St. John the Baptist Ukrainian Church in Riverhead to collect supplies that will be flown over to Ukraine for distribution. We need bandages, gloves, first aid kits, flashlights, packages of socks, new socks, not old socks, toothpaste, batteries, sleeping bags, and more. We're asking that you bring the boxes to the Jewish Center. Don't seal the boxes, and we'll take them on over to the church in Riverhead. A full list of everything that we need can be found in the flyers in the foyer. We'll also be posting links on social media. I think we've already posted on Facebook and Instagram. You'll be receiving emails of the full list of things that we need to be dropped off in the upcoming weeks. We're a people with open hearts, a community that recognizes the importance of sustaining those in need. I do not think that our problem is timtum halev, a stopped-up heart. I think the problem is that our hearts are so full that our problem is how to direct the outpouring of our generosity. I hope you'll prove my inclinations right, that we aren't going to collect just a meager amount of supplies for those in need in Ukraine, but that we'll struggle to find a vehicle big enough to bring all of the supplies that we collect over to Riverhead. I hope our head of maintenance, I hope Nick, comes to us next week in a huff and says, what am I going to do with all of this stuff? Where am I going to store all of these things that you've so generously collected from everybody? I hope that's our problem. The world in which we live is fractured, we know that, often shattered into countless jagged pieces. It's our responsibility to mend the brokenness, to repair what we can with what we have, to let our hearts open to giving, because that is who we always have been, and that is who we are. Shabbat Shalom. We'll mention tomorrow's meeting when we get to announcements. But for now, we'll invite you to rise for Aleinu, page 310 in your prayer books.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל
You can be seated. Our thoughts now turn to those who are no longer with us, but whose lives still shine ever brightly in our lives. As we read the names of members of our community for whom we are in a period of mourning, if you're joining us in person, we'll invite you to rise if you are able so that we could acknowledge you as mourners. If you're joining us virtually, we encourage you to use the reactions feature and raise your hand just so that we can see that you are mourners in our community. If there's a name that we don't read, but a name that you'd like to share, we'll invite you to rise and share that name afterward or type that name into the chat, and we would be happy to read it on your behalf. In the period of Shiva, we remember Frida Meisler, mother of Esther Wieder, mother-in-law of Ben Wieder. Period of Shloshim, David Sempt, brother of Michael Sempt. Susan Berkman and Robert Kay. We're in the year of mourning for Maria Purpura, Rita Katz, John Harrison, Irving Markowitz, Estella Gass, Sharon Epstein, Jared Geldner, Sari Faith Brownstein, Boris Rubenstein, Reuben Cohen, Myrna Klein, Sina Benedek, Emily Levin, Rochelle Grossinger, Marilyn Glosserman, Frances Magan, Isabel Barnett, Sydney Silverman, Joan Tager, Joanna Rose, Edward G. Shufro, M. Gerald Cohen, Harold Etkin, Ellen Frank, Alan White, Evelyn Myron, Marvin Boris, Joanne Weeder, Peter Weinstein, Warren Davis, and David Minot. It's the yard sites this week of Adolf Gottlieb, Murray Hillman, Amy Reich, Leonard Schneider, Maxine Greenfield, Donna Joan Purton, Henry Blader, Elise Brookman, Carrie Grossman, Rosie Weeder, David Zucker, Irving Dolch, Louis Laffer, Gertrude Sawyer, Helen Schleif, Ruth Gardner, Pearl Lieberman, Harry White, Herman Schaffran, Aaron Moshe Weeder, Lillian Gelber, Abraham Appel, Elliot Lazar, Adoro Pacone, Erwin E. Cyrus, Susan Bodner, and Pablito Valador. Are there any names of those in our community that you'd like to add? And to these names, we also add Ed Schoenfeld, Henry James Hickson, Alan Levine, Donald Ingram, and that's it. Kaddish is on page 316. We'll invite you to rise in support of our mourners if you are able. Yit Gadal v'yit Gadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Balma divrach hiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh. B'chayechon u'v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. Bagala u'vizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach leolam u'lamei amaya. Yit barach v'yishtabach v'yit pa'ar v'yit romam v'yit naseh. V'yit hadar v'yit aleh v'yit halal Shemei d'kudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma ve'emru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael ve'emru, amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael ve'emru,
Amen.
amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories forever be a blessing. You can be seated. We actually do have a bunch of announcements today, so help me out if I forget anything. Let me start out by saying Torah Study is at 12 p.m., either in person with us in the small sanctuary, or you can join us virtually as well. As with all of our services, you can now join us in person or virtual. That includes our Friday evening services at 6 o'clock and our morning minyan on Thursdays at 8:15 a.m. Also, coming up in the weeks to come, we have Purim. March 16th, our Purim, it's not a spiel, but we have a traditional Megillah reading called Hey Jews. It's a Beatles-themed Megillah reading, and that is we'll intersperse the Megillah reading with a couple of Beatles parodies. We hope you join us for that, or the program on March 20th, that's a Sunday, It is our Purim for Dummies program with ventriloquist Jonathan Geffner. You must pre-register for those programs. The Purim program on the 16th is hybrid. It's in person and virtual. The program on the 20th is just in person. And as I mentioned earlier, we are collecting supplies that will be shipped to Ukraine for those in need over there. There's a full list of everything that we need on the flyers in the foyer, and I think we'll be sending out an email shortly with that full list as well. You can drop it off anytime during business hours at the Jewish Center. What did I miss, Cantor?
Annual meeting.
And Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. It's a lot going on. Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m., we have our annual meeting, which is virtual only. The link, I believe, went out yesterday to join that meeting. Okay, what are we going to conclude with this morning, Cantor?
The old goody, Ein Keloheinu. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Gadolenu, Ein Kimalkeinu, Ein Kimoshienu, Mich Eloheinu, Mich Adonenu, Mich Kimalkeinu, Mich Moshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I see there are a couple questions in the chat about certain things about the donations that we're collecting. Full flyer will go out with all the details and instructions on what we can accept and where to donate it. Let's unmute everybody so that you can wish each other a
Kiddush?
Shabbat Shalom as well.
Rabbi, we're doing Kiddush and Motzi?
Ah, that's right. You could even stay for us as we're going to do Kiddush and Motzi in the sanctuary. For those joining us in person, you each get your own individually wrapped challahs, and please take a wine or grape juice for Kiddush.
Vishamru,
Should we unmute everybody for this? Yeah, let's unmute everybody.
Vishamru, B'nai Yisrael, HaShabbat, Lasot et HaShabbat, Ledotam Berit Olam. Vishamru, B'nai Yisrael, HaShabbat, Lasot et HaShabbat, Ledotam Berit Olam. Beini uvein B'nai Yisrael, Oti le'olam, Oti le'olam, Oti le'olam. Vishamru B'nai Yisrael, HaShabbat, Lasot et HaShabbat, Ledotam Berit. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדותם בריתו. על כן בירך אדוני את יום השבת ויקודשהו. Therefore the Lord blessed the seventh day and called it holy. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. לחיים טובים ולשלום.
Posted you're talking.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המוציא לחם מן הארץ. אמן. שבת שלום, שבת שלום, שבת 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 שלום, שבת שלום, שבת שלום, שבת שבת